Devi Mahalakshmi Polytechnic Titwala, Department of Computer Engineering and Information Technology. Semester 3rd, Subject DMS or POD, presented by Ms. Anita Shirtula. Chapter number 3, Interactive SQL and Advanced SQL, Performance Tuning. In previous video, we have discussed about the index and their types. So, now in this chapter, the synonymous learning outcome of this video to understand about the synonyms and the sequences. In this video, we will learn what are the synonyms and how to create and draw the synonyms as well as the sequences. Then next is synonyms. It is an alias or alternate name for a table, view, sequence or other schema object. They are used mainly to make it easy for users to access database objects owned by other users. They hide the underlying object's identity and make it harder for a malicious program or user to target the underlying object. Because a synonym is just an alternate name for an object, it requires no storage other than its definition. When an application uses a synonyms, the DBMS forwards the request to the synonyms underlying base object. It is a form of a shorthand used to simplify the task of refreshing a database object. It provides a means to transparently allow users to display and use other users' object. It can provide a level of security by masking the name and owner of an object and by providing location transparency for remote objects of a distributed database. Also, they are convenient to use and reduce the complexity of SQL statement for database users. It allows underlying objects to be renamed or moved. Where only the synonyms needs to be redefined and applications based on the synonyms continue to function without modification. The creating synonyms. To create a private synonyms in your own schema, you must have the create synonyms privilege. To create a private synonyms is another user's schema. You must have the create any synonyms privilege. To create a public synonym, you must have the create public synonyms, the system privilege. Create synonyms is using the create synonyms statements. The underlying schema objects need not exist, nor do you need a privileges to access the object. So the synonyms allows the underlying objects to be renamed or moved, where only the synonym needs to be redefined and the application based on the synonyms continue to functions without modification. There are two categories of synonyms, the public and the private. A public synonyms can be accessed by any system user, and the individual creating a public synonyms does not own the synonyms, rather it will belong to the public user group that exists within oracles. You can create both public and private synonyms. A public synonyms is owned by the special user group named public and is accessible to every users in a database. and private synonyms is contained in the schema of a specific user. A system user can grant the privilege to use the private synonym that they own to other systems users. In order to create synonyms, you will need to have the create synonyms privilege. This privilege will be granted to you by the database administrator. And you must have the create public synonyms privilege in order to create the public synonyms. You can successfully use any private synonyms contained in your schema or any public synonyms, assuming that you have the necessary privileges to access the underlying object, either explicitly from an enables rule or from a public. You can also reference any. The three advantages to synonyms uses. The first is it provides what is termed location transparency, because the synonyms names hides the actual object name and object owner from the user of the synonym. Second advantage is you can create a synonym for a database object and then refer to the synonyms in application code. The underlying object can be moved or renamed, and redefinitions of the synonyms will allow the application code to continue to execute without errors. And third advantage is in synonyms, there are major uses of a synonyms. In the two uses are there. The first is object invisibility and second is the location invisibility. The object invisibility is that it can be created to keep the original object hidden from the user, and locations invisibility. The synonyms can be created as aliases for tables and other objects that are not part of the local database. The synonyms is divided into two categories. The first is the dropping synonyms. If you own a synonyms, you have the right to drop that means the delete the synonyms. The drop synonyms commands is a quite simple. The syntax of this command: the drop synonyms names are there and semicolon. In order to drop a public synonyms, the next category is the renaming synonyms. The private synonyms can be renamed with the rename synonyms command. All existing refers to the synonyms are automatically updated. Any systems users with the privileges to use a synonyms will retain those privileges if the synonyms name is changed. The syntax of the rename synonyms commands is like that for the rename commands for any other database object such as a view or a table. So syntax of the rename synonyms is the rename all synonyms name to a. Next topic is sequences. Primary key is used in table to maintain a unique value for the records in the table. Primary key is applied on one columns or the combinations of columns in the table. Here sequences are another concept which helps to maintain unique values for the various records in the table. Sequences are the database product features which help to populate the primary key by incrementing and returning its value. Sequences are used in database because many applications require each row having a unique values in the table. Here sequences provide any easy way to generate unique values for the records in the table. Sequences are the set of an integer number like 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Because of database sequences, there is no transactions isolations occur. That means two or more transactions will not get the same value. So database will not affecting when two or more users accessing the same transactions at the same time. Without database sequences, it is not possible to generate unique incrementing numbers. Sequences are just like the counter which generates the sequential numbers. The Oracle provides the capability to generate sequences of unique numbers, and they are called sequences. It's just like a tables, views, indexes, and synonyms. A sequence is a type of database object. Sequences are used to generate the unique sequential integer values. The next is creating sequences. To create a sequence, create sequence statement is used. The create sequence statement creates a sequence in order, and the sequences automatically generate the primary key value. Sequence number is generated by the sequence statement, which just create the unique values for records in the database, and it increments its value automatically, which is independent of the transactions committing or rolling back. One user can never get the sequence number which is generated by another user. We can access the values in SQL statement using the once a sequence is created, it is used to return the current value of the sequence. To increment the sequence and return the new value, then the next val clause is used. Here, the syntax of the create sequence commands is fairly complex because it has a numerous optional clauses. The syntax of the creating sequence are given here. The example of a creating sequence. The create sequence, order number sequence, min value, max value, cycle, cache is the 20 or 10. The sequence created. Then increment by. Increment by is used for. This clause is used to specify the times interval between the sequence number. The sequence numbers can be any positive or negative value, but not 0. If this clause is omitted, by the default value is 1. The max value and min value is used to specify the maximum or minimum value which are generated by sequences. Then start with. This clause is used to specify the first sequence number generated by using the start with clause. And then cycle. Second, this clause is used to specify that the sequence continues to generate the repeated values. And then next thing, altering sequence. Sequence can be altered using an alter sequence statement. Start value of sequence cannot be altered. This statement is used to change the way or actions of sequence, also used to change the increment, minimum or maximum value and cache numbers of the sequences. Alter sequence statements will not affect the past sequence number. To restart the sequence from the different number, you should drop and recreate it again. A sequence is usually altered when it is desirable to set or eliminate the values of the min value or the max value parameter, or to change the incremented by value, or to change the number of cached sequence number. When specifying a min value clause, the specified value should be less than the max value where a sequence generates the ascending order. In the case of descending sequence, the max value should be less than the min value. This statement is used to change the way or action of sequence, also used to change the increment minimums or the maximum values and catches number of the sequence. Alter sequence statements will not affect the past sequence numbers. The next category is the renaming synonyms. The private synonyms can be renamed with the rename synonyms command. All existing refers to the synonyms are automatically updated. Any systems users with the privileges to use a synonyms will retain those privileges if the synonyms name is changed. The syntax of the rename synonyms commands is like that. Next is dropping a sequence. A drop sequence statement is used to remove a sequence from the database. Restart a sequence by dropping a sequence and then creating a new one. For example, suppose we have a sequence with a current value of 160 and want to restart or recreate a sequence with a value of 30. Then you can drop the sequence using drop sequence statement and create a new statement with the value of 30. The sequence must be in your own organizations or structure for a database. You should have the drop any sequence in systems privileges. The drop sequence command is used to drop the sequence that need to be recreated or are no longer needed. The general format is shown here along with an example that drops the order number sequence. Thank you.